Man, Matt, I have never been this wet at the start of a podcast before.
It's quite rainy lately, isn't it?
Yeah, finally our background matches the actual environment outside. I stepped outside for 2 minutes to take my son to a play date, and it was just like downpouring. And I was like, oh, I'll dry off by the time for the podcast. Nope. Serves me right for going outside in the Pacific Northwest without full rain gear.
Yeah, how dare you?
Yeah. I remember when I first moved up here and there was like farmers market on Sunday or whatever in downtown Portland area, and it was pouring rain. I was like, well, it must be closed. You get there and it's like lines around the block for all the different like booths and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, these people don't slow down when it rains.
I mean, gotta remember the reason why in Twilight the vampires chose, I think it was Washington's, because it's always overcast and rainy, so
there you go. You just put on that SPF like 2000 and vampires are good to go up here.
Yeah, you're good.
It is funny whenever I bring up the Pacific Northwest to people who aren't from here, and like somehow Twilight manages to enter the conversation as if I don't know why. As if I know about the production of Twilight. They're like, oh, wasn't it made in that city? I'm like, I don't know. Like
I don't really know. That's just I actually did see the Twilight movie. I had a friend who was
I've seen them all.
Oh, have you?
They are fun to watch, man.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, so popcorn.
I saw the first one in college because my friend was like, hey, you want to go see a vampire movie? I'm like, sure, why not? And it was Twilight.
Yeah. Matt just wanted to go see Twilight.
I just wanted to go see Twilight.
You were the friend that like bugged the other guy.
Yeah. Charged.
I'll go see Twilight with you, Matt. We should go, could do a double date. Go see the sequels.
Sure.
See what happens with Werewolf Boy in the love triangle.
That's what his name is, Werewolf Boy, too.
Yeah, I don't remember. The guy who manages to get his shirt off all the time. You're like, it's freezing outside. Put some clothes on.
It's because he's ripped, bro.
Yeah.
And he's a werewolf.
I mean, if I look like that, I'd find a way to get my shirt off as well.
Yeah.
It's fair. Welcome to the Level With Me podcast, everyone. Glad to have you back. Interesting stuff happened this week. Some game launches. We will get into that in a second. If you guys want to support the podcast, we always have our Patreon link down below, and people who are Patreon members get to watch the recordings live, and then we have a little post-show chat about stuff that those members are invited to. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and we will get into the titillating news of this week. What was
titillating?
Titillating.
You're really selling this right now.
I am selling it. All right. The news is interesting. The games that came out, semi-interesting.
Well, except for one. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I will say, and this is maybe the dev mind in me saying this, but the Grammys are now accepting game soundtracks. They have a new game soundtrack submission, which I think is cool because obviously, like, some of the scores in like Zelda games and your favorite games they're amazing. They're fantastic.
They're incredible.
And they should be considered in the music awards show. So that's very cool to see them getting recognition and getting their own category as well. So I'm excited to see what's on there. Avatar, the Pandora game, got nominated. I didn't play it. You said you played it. I assume it's just
7 hours. It was okay. It was fine.
I would assume it's just the Avatar score. God of War.
Yeah.
Your favorite Spider-Man 2. I think you've had a couple.
I mean, I liked it. I wasn't like, it was basically
you were like game of the year.
Large. I really liked it, okay? But it wasn't my favorite of the year. It didn't win my game of the year award.
Okay. Star Wars Outlaws is on there. Was the soundtrack in that any good?
It was Star Wars-y. So I guess if you like Star Wars style music, it was okay.
And then Wizardry Proving Grounds. I don't know what that game is.
Well, I've never even heard. Have I heard of that game?
We gotta brush up on our game music stuff.
Apparently, Wizardry Proving Grounds. What the heck?
Is it like a Harry Potter knockoff or something?
No, it's a dungeon crawler. Weird. Okay. It has mixed recent reviews and only 700 reviews total. And it came out May 23rd, 2024. and it's like it looks very indie. Okay.
Well, so
maybe it's got a bopping soundtrack, you know?
Either the people making the nominations are really in touch with all game music, or somebody's greasing the wheels over there, which neither would surprise me. Actually, the first would surprise me more if they were super in touch with all the music. Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't know. Little side story. It'll make the Grammys more interesting, in my opinion, for gamers. Now, what was the favorite thing? I mean, do you want me to start talking about Star Citizen right away, or do you want to talk about a different game?
Yeah, we could talk about a game that actually has released and is somewhat functional. Okay. Planet Coaster 2. Remember all those good old days when you grew up and you were playing Roller Coaster Tycoon and you just had so much fun making coasters? Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that, but boy, has things progressed a lot since the early days.
You do like quadruple loops now or something?
Well, it gives you a lot of options. It's not perfect, and the community, I wouldn't say is split on it necessarily, but there are some things, a lot of the community saying that the game may have been a little underbaked because there's just some weird problems. There's bugs and glitches all over the place. For someone who's never played Planet Coaster 1, who is learning how the entire series performs, it is such a fun, I wouldn't say immersive, but such a fun way of just painting a park. There is management, right? You can't make death coasters, at least when you're in the career. So if you have a coaster,
wait, what is a death coaster?
So you played Roller Coaster Tycoon when you were younger? Yes.
But it's like I don't actually remember all. You have failed as
a human being. Okay. So back in then, you could make coasters that would just launch people into the air and they would just die. So you could, it was literally a death coaster. Or there's so much G-forces they would just cease to exist.
So do people wait in line? They see the people in front of them go,
well, I mean,
and then die, and then they're down. Like, sure, here's my $10. Sign me up.
Yep, sign me up. I don't remember how it exactly worked in Tycoon. Yeah. It's been like forever, like actually 25 years. But I do remember you could just straight up make coasters that would just eat people,
it's
in
like
the air.
It sounds like Lemmings. You ever play that game? Where
no, I didn't know.
It's just Lemmings, and they run through a level, and you have to quickly build stuff so that they don't fall into pits and kill themselves.
Nice. Yes, kind of like that.
Yeah,
but not really.
Well, but I'm just saying they'll just kill themselves if you provide the memes for them to do so.
Yes. Yeah. So in Planet Coaster 2, at least the career, that's the only thing I played right now. I haven't touched the sandbox. They give you these maps that you can play on. They've kind of set things up, and then you kind of have to go from there and use your own creativity. So it's fun to see what other people have come up with in their parks that use that same template. But it's really fun because they give you so many tools to make the park look however you want. I would actually argue that this game is more of a map editor than it is a coaster game. That's probably pushing things too far, but they give you all of these assets that you can place wherever you want. And you can increase the size of the asset. You can make them smaller. You can then attach it to other assets to make bigger assets. And so people are making facades on the sides of, buildings. They're making giant coasters that look like real coasters in real life. And you can go in and just fine tune every little detail.
That's pretty cool.
To your liking, which is incredible, right? So you can literally basically make anything you want. And it's just so much fun to see the creativity of the community. What's also neat is they have a blueprint feature because there is such this emphasis on you going in and
it seems to be becoming more popular in just building games these days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Blueprint systems where you can set it up to build out a layout or something the way you like.
Yep. So in this, you can, if you create, let's say, a little shack for selling burgers, right? You make something really unique. And you can then save that blueprint and upload it to their nice. It's not a store, but then anyone can go over and just hit subscribe on that. And now they can then just use that blueprint in their build. So if you made a really awesome entrance to your thing that had like a castle, like you can make it literally just like a castle. right?
Yeah.
Wasn't developed by the developers. It was handcrafted by the players, and then you can use that in your own game, which is just really cool.
That's
Very
really
cool.
smart. Devs are certainly getting wise to that idea of like, how can we integrate player created assets it's not just like giving players omnipotent control over our game, but rather here's our game, but also now players can add to it in a really easy, non-game breaking way that you can choose to participate in to the extent that you want. And it's like, it's kind of brilliant. It's a great way to just give free content without saying you have to rely on free content.
Yeah. There's also, of course, the building of the coasters, which is fun. You have to manage the fear, you have to manage the excitement. So you're trying to get this fine line, because if you make it too high and too fast, like sending them off the side of a cliff that goes 5,000 miles an hour, they don't like that apparently, and they get too scared.
Come on, that would be the most popular coaster ever made.
No,
be like, Matt, have you been on the cliff coaster? You go like 300 miles an hour. You can't breathe for parts of it. It's awesome.
You pass out halfway through, and then you come to, and then you're going through another loop, and then you just start screaming. Yeah. So you have to manage that, and it makes it a little frustrating when you're getting started because you're zoomed out so far, and you're like, they can handle that, right? And then you spend 30 minutes building, or an hour building a coaster, and then you test it, and you're like, dude, it's awful. Like they're dying. They're experiencing like 10 Gs. Fighter pilots experience like 9 Gs, and they have to train for that, you know?
I realized on a roller coaster once that I couldn't be a fighter pilot because I have pretty low blood pressure, which in many ways can be a good thing in life. It's but we're going on one of those coasters where your legs dangle below you, and then it does all these tight loops. So the G-forces are pretty extreme, and I felt my like feet throbbing, and I was like, that's a weird sensation, and then I just passed out.
My feet are throb.
Yeah, I was like, why do my feet throb? And then I woke up at the end and was like, all right. And I just got off
very fun.
the coaster and was like, all right. So
have you ever seen the fighter pilots and how they train, and like they have to like squeeze their entire body to keep their blood in their brain?
Yep.
It's bananas.
Screw that, man. Like it seems hard enough to like fly an airplane as it is. And then you're also like, hang on, it's like rubbing your tummy and patting your head, you got to do all that stuff at the same time. And then you watch the Blue Angels do that, where they have to do that in formation and breathe and do all that stuff. You're like, no, thank you. Yep. I'll stay right here on the ground. Thank you very much.
That's why they get paid the big bucks, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's fun making coasters and like designing these parks. My critique with it is that, I think other people's critique with it is that the game's a little buggy and it feels like some things were not really as well thought out. The management side, which is something that I like management in these games, but it doesn't feel very good, and it's very tedious. I had a water park, just a small water park.
No supermarket simulator then.
Oh yeah, not supermarket simulator here. I set up a bunch of lifeguards to, of course, make sure that people didn't die in the pool. And I had a couple of them down, and I think I had 2 pools, and I had, I think, 6 chairs amongst all of them, right? I had like 15 lifeguards, and I had most of them just patrolling in this certain area, so they couldn't like travel anywhere else. And for some reason, for like majority of the time, they were just never at the actual lifeguard like tower.
Nice.
And they always would say like, looking for work. I'm like, what do you mean looking for work? It's right there. Just sit down.
Gotcha.
So that's
infuriating in those types of games when you're like, the thing that's supposed to be happening isn't happening, and now the simulation is broken, and that can be really problematic in any sim game, but especially one that tries for depth, where if any cog in the machine fails, the whole simulation fails. It's like my SimCity story of one bus blocking an intersection and just getting stuck there, and then people couldn't get to school, and then the education level dropped, and then the nuclear power plant melted down because they had no educated workers, and the whole city exploded, and it was just like one stinking bus breaks down in an intersection and it's bugged out and won't go away, and the whole world
and the entire
explodes.
city explodes. That's wild.
So when you make a sim game, it's got to work. Okay.
Not to that extreme.
Did some people drown?
No, I don't even know. I don't even know if there's consequences for if you don't have. I think it might just lower your park rating, and then less people will want to go to the pool because they'll see it as unsafe. So it's always just a monetary thing, probably at the end of the day, just like normal capitalism, right? Yeah. They're not there to save people. They're there to give you the sense that you're safe so that you go and spend money. That's very cynical of me. But other than that, hopefully they'll tighten that up, because I like the management idea. I like the idea of setting up like zones around where you'll have your mechanics in this area just working on these things. But in reality, at least in its current limitation, it doesn't really function how I would like. And it's also very tedious setting all that up too.
Gotcha.
But besides that, if you want to make beautiful coasters and you want to make a really cool, beautiful park that is literally unique to you, there are the tools to do it, and it's been just such a vibe making parks.
Cool. Is Roller Coaster Tycoon still a franchise that they're making titles? I don't think
so. No, I think they might be the same. I could be completely wrong. They might be similar developers.
I don't know. It's kind of like cities taking over SimCity, right? It's like one fizzled out and someone came in to fill the niche.
Roller Coaster Tycoon did have a game that came out in 2023.
Oh, okay.
But so I don't know. I don't keep track of that as much.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It's been quite a while.
Okay, that's enough roller coasters. Let's talk about spaceships. Finally.
Yes, finally.
A thing happened in Star Citizen that I got excited about, which is pretty rare this year, I will say. 2024 has been it's like weird whelming. It's whelming in the sense that it's like all these cool quality of life features came out and there was nothing to do with them other than be like, hey, you can go do all the exact same stuff you did before. But now
you mean Star Citizen over the last 5 years, 8-10 years?
I would argue that the gameplay has evolved a little more during that period of time. But this latest patch didn't add gameplay, but what it did add, Matt, are you ready for it?
The hot anime girls have arrived.
One day we'll keep holding out for that one.
We'll keep dreaming.
Giant spaceships, Matt. Gigantic player flyable spaceships are in the game.
Weren't they already in the game?
But there's new ones now, and they're big. They're really big. And you remember that that white spaceship that's like the big 890 jump? There's like a mission where you have to go onto it and take out the pirates and save the people or something.
They're already dead, but yeah.
Yeah, they're already dead because it's bugged and stuff. And you're like, I saved nobody.
No one.
I saved no one.
There was that one guy in the wall, and I somehow killed him through the wall.
Oh yeah, we had to complete the mission. You had to like clip into the wall to try and find the bad guy that was hiding in there. That was cool.
Yep. Yeah.
So that massive ship, they just launched a new one called the Polaris, and it's that size, but it's purely for combat. And it is just like covered with guns.
Just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful, massive torpedoes. It's got like a whole bay of torps that I don't know how much damage they do. Probably blow up a big old ship real quickly. Biggest turret, biggest player operated turret in the game is on the front end of this ship. Beauty, big old thing. Huge hangar bay. You can fit all kinds of ships in there. Gigantic cargo bay ramps that stick out when you land it on a planet. Like these huge ramps go out and you can like drive all your vehicles down. It's just massive. It's like this huge force to be reckoned with, and like the detail, exquisite, dude. It is amazing.
How much does it cost?
I don't know, actually. It's probably I don't look at the prices for these things anymore. Jason's in chat. He'll tell us.
Do you have it?
It's probably like $500. Yeah, I didn't hear what you asked me there.
I said, you don't own it though.
I mean, okay. Here's the thing, Matt. Here's the thing.
I don't know the price, but I definitely paid for it.
I bought a Hammerhead many, many years ago. I'm talking like when it was announced. So this might have been like 6-7 years ago. I traded the Hammerhead up for a Polaris last year, and it was like a $5 difference. So
so you spent, how much is Jesus price level cap. You have a problem. That doesn't make it any better.
Also, whatever the price of the hammerhead is now, it appreciated in value. So when I bought the hammerhead, I probably paid like around monies for it, and now it's more monies for it. It's like twice as many monies.
I'm looking this up. I ain't letting you. Star Citizen hammerhead price. That is $725.
I didn't pay that much for the hammerhead. It must have been. It was not even half that price when it.
Likely story.
Hang on. Star Citizen hammerhead launch price. Let's see if they save that. They have that info.
That's so much money, dude.
Original 650? No way.
I had a feeling it was a lot. So remember when you were like, when you're you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're like, the game's gonna come out eventually.
I've drank all the Star Citizen Kool-Aid.
You're drinking a lot of Kool-Aid, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta go to the bathroom, actually. I'm so full of Star Citizen Kool-Aid over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have the ship. It was like a $5 upgrade.
And you do have a problem, but continue.
It's only a problem if the game doesn't come out and isn't amazing, Matt. Okay?
Yeah.
We're fully invested, too big to fail. We just have to prop up this giant tent of a project now. Okay?
Yep.
Gotta keep flawless logic, sunken cost fallacy, 100%. There's another ship that's also massive. It's only not as impressive because the Polaris is there to be like, I also just came out this patch. It's called the Star Lancer. It's huge, probably crew of 5 to 10 or something like that. Big old turrets, beautiful looking ship, fly around.
Can you change the color of these guys?
You can buy skins.
I'm assuming those cost money.
Yeah. You will be able to buy them. I don't know if you can buy them in-game yet for in-game currency. They might be out of game only, but
Star Citizen is definitely not really tossing away the old image of, it's basically a store for ships that do not a whole lot.
Yeah, but I will say, man, these ships, no other game does ships like Star Citizen.
You're not wrong. Yeah. They're gorgeous. They really are. And they're like interactive and there's cool little secrets and stuff, but there's not really a whole lot of reason to use them.
You're not wrong. And these giant ships, there's some funny stuff in it, which irks my game designer brain, which is like the pilot controlling the massive Polaris can't shoot torpedoes. Only the torpedo launcher can shoot torpedoes. The torpedo launcher is like stuck in the bowels of the ship somewhere. So you've just created a dumb mechanic where the pilot has to like aim the ship at the other ship you want to fire a torpedo at. And then you're like, all right, fire the it's just like this.
Fire the torpedoes.
It's sort of a weird way to force multi-crew stuff where you're like, why not just make well-designed systems that require multiple people as opposed to weird, like taking one game mechanic and splitting it in two and being like, you press the A button and you press the B button and now it's multi-crew. I'm like, you guys can do better than that, Star Citizen.
Admittedly, it has got to be really difficult to try to make that all feel like you are actually communicating and coordinating with someone.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of, I think this might have been like a Planetside 2 thing. Might have been PS1 if it was that old, but you had like a tank with kind of a spinal mounted cannon on the front of it. So the driver had to turn the tank and basically aim the tank. But then you had a gunner that would then fire the shot. So you're like, this guy's doing all the driving and aiming, and that guy over there is just hitting the fire button. Like, this is just a weird multi-crew dynamic. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I mean, the attack helicopter in Battlefield is sort of similar, but you are aiming as the gunner. You do have a little bit more at your disposal.
Yeah.
Especially with the TV missile. I miss the TV missile days.
Such good teamwork, man. I mean, every game should learn from that. I would argue that BF1 also had some very good airplane teamwork, but it was just a little bit more boring for the gunner in that sense.
I'd say it was a lot more boring.
Yeah, you're right. I spent way less time in the gunner seat. I was like, this is great.
I'm having a blast, and I'm back there just like,
Matt, did you see that? We just blew up the Zeppelin. You're like, nope, didn't see a thing. I'm just watching the tail of the airplane over here.
Yeah. But when someone did try to get on us, that's when it did get exciting.
That's when you shined. You're like, it is my turn. Jason popped in chat and said it's $750 for the Polaris. It's not even $1,000.
It's not even like it's chump change, right?
It's nothing. Do you want to make the greatest game ever or not? You know?
I mean, it's nice to know that they have things in the pipeline where it's going to become a game. I like the whole recent Citizens Con was exciting in the sense that we now have an actual vision and roadmap kind of for what the game is actually going to be. Player driven, economy, that's great.
Yep. Crafting, base building, all that fun stuff. Looks cool. Excited about what it will become one day. 2026, baby.
Do it.
Yep.
Do it. 2026?
Yeah. Well, speaking of long-awaited release dates, Stalker 2 is going to be here on the 20th.
Yeah.
And man, I've been waiting for that game for my whole life, basically. Since the first one.
Came out of the womb thinking to yourself, I can't wait for that Stalker 2 game.
I mean, the book has been out since, I don't know, Soviet Russia era, so it's been out for a while. But it looks, we'll finally get to see if the performance and the visuals match up. It's gone gold. I think they've had enough time to work out the bugs, and they delayed it quite a few times, and so hopefully that means we're getting a good product. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm more on the cautious side because they've gone through a lot, and I don't blame them. If it's not what we wanted, I'll still be upset and sad, but it's kind of also understandable. Yeah. I'm really curious to see how hardcore the game is, right? Like I've seen reviewers who got to play it at conventions saying that it is still really hardcore like the original game, but the original game came out at a time in which I don't know what to call it. It's like gamers were more forgiving of extremely difficult mechanics. And like the original Stalker, you can walk out of your starting village and just get absolutely torn apart by some rabid dogs in the forest. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was going to just get ripped apart immediately. And that was just more accepted. So I don't know if the new one is going to be that level of hardcore or if they're going to try and game design it a little bit more for a modern audience. Because it's weird because on one hand you have the charm of that where you're like, yeah, this game's crazy hardcore and there's no training wheels and you just got to figure it out. Whereas if you're trying to sell the product to millions and millions of people, that becomes less appealing to the large audience, right? They're no longer a cute little game that can make it as an indie project. It's a big name now.
Yeah, you got to find that fine balance, walk that fine line of making it accessible, but also keeping the creative vision of trying to make it hardcore. Because just throwing someone, just be like, all right, good luck. And then you just have them die over and over without good design and guiding them a certain way. That's just going to get frustrating. Games, I think, have evolved, beyond that, where you can do that in a way that is also still structured and still guides the player a little bit. So I wouldn't expect it to be that challenging.
I'm really excited about the new environmental puzzles because they did kind of have little mazes and puzzle-like stuff in the first one where there's a lot of sort of environmental traps that are like anomalies, right? They're created by the weird radiation zone, and some of them are invisible or some of them will trigger when you step in a certain area, and then fire will start shooting out of areas and you got to run out of there. It looks like that has been evolved a lot for the sequel, so I'm really excited to see those in Unreal Engine 5 because they look incredible. And they had some clips of you triggering a trap, and then a pack of rabid dogs is attacking you, and they run past the trap and sort of lure the dogs into the trap, and then they get ripped apart, and you're like, whoa, okay, interesting. You could either be killed by the trap or even use it to try and kill other enemies.
Advantage.
Yeah, so that stuff looks really fun. I can't wait for all that kind of emergent stuff, because the game where other games would let you do that as like a fun mechanic, Stalker is like, you got 2 magazines of ammo. Like, do you want to use that, or do you want to try and figure out how to kill that guy over there without using all your bullets, you know? So they give you a good reason to try your best to not engage, or engage when necessary, and use the environment to your advantage.
And that's what I'm hoping for, is that the survival elements where you really have to kind of scavenge around and really think about the engagement, going in and just guns blazing like you could, but like you only got so much to work with. So
yeah.
Keep my fingers crossed.
I might be getting early access to it, so hopefully next podcast we can chat about it, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the rules are yet. They haven't given me the rules. I don't know if it's early access to make an early video or talk about it on launch day.
I might have to slide into your DMs and maybe
Yeah. Well, you know who to talk to. You can, I'm sure you can get on the list. We'll chat about it post podcast.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. You played the update to 6 Days in Fallujah, right?
Yeah, I did a sponsored spiel for it, and it was okay. It played a lot like I played like a year ago when I last tried it, and like it's still really immersive, but I also was, I wouldn't say necessarily expecting a little bit more, but it's still brutally difficult. I just don't think they've added a ton more since the last time. They've added in 2 missions, like single player missions, and man, having it be like a documentary style thing for a brutal war is a very interesting take. Makes you very uncomfortable. It's like this actually happened, and these are real lives, and it's like
and they're trying to portray it pretty realistically in the game, right?
Yeah, they are. So not for the squeamish, because it does get pretty. It's pretty hardcore. So I enjoyed my time. I played with some friends, and it's really difficult. So it's fun to, have voice comms, and it can be very immersive because you have proximity and radio, and you kind of have to think about when you're going to use that over the other to try to call things out. Because if you just call out, no one's nearby, and then they round the corner and they shoot you in the face because they thought you weren't over there. It's like, well, yep. So it's an okay game. I enjoyed my time, but still needs more time in the oven for early access.
Gotcha. I noticed also where the initial response to the game was, I think, either very positive or mostly positive, and it's gone down a rung since kind of since they released it out of early access, and people are like, oh yeah, kind of thought we were going to get a little bit more from this in terms of what was promised or what we were expecting.
They do. So it's procedurally generated, where each time you jump in, just like because they're trying to simulate what it would be like if you were there, because you don't know the layouts. You'll never know the layouts. Every time it's a new part of the city, you got to try to clear out every single building. Yeah. And so that's interesting, but at the same time, that can only push you so far. Yeah. And it can make it can feel repetitive, like every mission is the same, because while it's not, there are differences, and some set pieces, that repetition does kind of set in.
I think we're learning. I think game developers are learning the right way to do procedurally generated content and the wrong way to do it. And when you just randomize a kind of a tile grid of assets that everybody's seen before, that can start to get really repetitive and uninteresting, because they're like, well, it's different. You don't know it. And you're like, yeah, but I've seen it all, and it doesn't visually look different, and it's not creating interesting, especially for an FPS.
At the end of the day, it is a FPS game. It is a game. It's a video game. So while you could argue, it's like, well, that's realistic, that was authentic. It's like, well, that's fine, but I'm still playing and buying a game, right? Like, there needs to be more.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And different tile sets, mixing the tile sets, all that kind of stuff. But PCG is, as much as it can be a time saver, it's also a huge upfront cost. So they might have gotten themselves into a position where they're just like, huge upfront cost. And now, depending on how we design the system, it's hard to add a new tile set or expand the idea beyond this. So, yeah, I don't know how it works. I thought it was an interesting idea, but I'm hearing similar stuff from other people. How you doing there, Matt?
Got a message. Sorry. We're good.
Okay. You're breaking the illusion that we're...
breaking the illusion!
We're sitting next to each other right now. My hand's like the size of your head, dude.
Yeah, my hand's a lot smaller compared to yours. Holy hell. You got big old hands, Levelcap.
Well, you know.
Big hands. You know
That's why I'm so good
hands?
at video games, to buy the extra large mouse sizes, you know?
Yeah.
You know about... It'd be funny if that was a thing. Actually, why isn't it a thing? They have extra large glove sizes and they have small gloves.
I mean, you would know. You got those big gloves, so...
Exactly. Ah, man. Yeah, so every once in a while, game publishers are like, hey, we're going to take a whole bunch of our games off the store forever. Oh. And then the community's like, no, that's my childhood and my memories. Don't do that. And then they do
please it. Please don't erase it from all history, please.
Yeah. So Sega, like Sonic the Hedgehog and every other major IP from the 90s, basically. Yeah. They're delisting a whole bunch of classic games from like Steam, PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, everything. And that it's not Sonic yet, at least the classic ones, but it's big ones, like Echo the Dolphin, Jet Set Radio, Toe Jam and Earl, etc., etc. All the games that you might have played back in the day if you owned a Sega Genesis. Mm-hmm. And it brings up the conversation once again on like, how can we improve game preservation? How can we keep games available for people who want to go back? And of course, emulation is like one of the obvious ones here, but it seems weird that publishers haven't figured out a cost-effective way to keep their games on the market, because I guess they take them off the market because there is a certain cost, I assume, to maintaining that title's playability. Like if a new Windows update comes out and it breaks some of their games, now they're like, well, now we have a list of 100 classic games that we have to update and make work.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And they're not really selling, we only sold like 100 of this one last year. Like,
can't justify it, right?
Yeah, it's just sort of a weird dynamic situation, one of which we haven't really come up with a good solution for, because the solution is to essentially pirate it through emulation, and the other one is to have a company lose money, essentially keeping their ancient titles alive.
Right.
And people are kind of, the conversation rarely acknowledges those two dynamics. It's usually a like publisher bad, gamer good.
Well, it's also kind of hard to sympathize with a giant publisher who makes tons of money.
Yeah, if they're making tons of money. I don't know how well Sega's doing these days, but but I mean, like EA does it, Ubisoft does it. They all do it. They all remove their old classic games. BF3. Yep. BF3's days are numbered, which really makes me sad. I'm like, that's not even that old, man. Like, but
it kind of is.
It is, but I mean, an old game now is like, 12, 13 years. When did BF3 come out? 2011. Yeah. So 13-ish years taking it off, or it's not done yet, but I think they were trying to do it.
Xbox, didn't they?
They took it off of last-gen consoles, but I do believe there was a conversation to actually remove it, and they got a bunch of flack. And they're like, all right, we'll leave it up. God.
Yeah. Because you're right. It actually hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
It's not that far back in the past.
Yeah. But it does remind me a little bit of the that movement, I think, in the UK right now, the anti-consumer kind of movement where they're trying to pass some laws that would make it so that publishers have to create a way for games to stay online, even if the publisher itself is going to stop supporting it officially and stop running servers and all that kind of stuff. How can the game still exist? And I think there's something there. I don't know what the right solution is either, but I think smart people could figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't want people to lose access to games over the years, just not only because of the history part of thing, but if someone actually bought a game, they should be able to play that game whenever they want because they purchased it. So I think there's some consumer protection stuff going on, especially for Europe, right? I'm guessing. But then there's also, well, okay, but how do you pay for keeping that online? You now need to hire someone to be able to make it so that they can offload all that stuff and allow other people to then maybe put it onto a server. But like, I'm assuming there's a cost there. That just doesn't, you can't just snap your fingers and make it work. So
yeah,
if they don't have the money, they don't have the money.
I wonder if there's like some sort of, and especially the Sega games, they're not online, right? So you don't have to worry about the server cost on that side. Right. You just have to worry about the game playing on modern devices, right? So if you get the new Android update and it breaks your Echo the Dolphin game, like, okay, like, do they really have the time and money to update that? Maybe there's some sort of thing where they can strike a deal with like a well-known or well-proven emulation group, where the emulation group can kind of become the gatekeepers for the game and they can make a little money off of it or whatever. I don't know. But some sort of symbiotic relationship there where we can still keep the history of games alive, because there isn't really a reason for those to go away. You know, there isn't really a good reason for us to be like, you can never play that game ever again because...
just imagine you can't read this book anymore because it's just too old.
Yeah. And obviously some things are like that in history, but I don't think the game industry
you can't read it anymore because it's in a different language, because language has evolved over hundreds of years. I mean, yeah.
Or it's a product with a finite supply, and those are degrading over time, and eventually there won't be any less.
But you know what I mean.
I do. But yeah, since games are digital, there isn't really a great reason that they should ever just go away forever.
Right.
Like, we should always.
And I'd also argue that there's a lot of effort put into trying to preserve those texts and preserve those books so that they don't just disappear into nothing. Yep.
There's actually a pretty good video game and pinball museum up here in the Pacific Northwest, which has got like all this classic stuff preserved, and it's cool, man. Going into them, I'm like, this is like my childhood walking into an arcade. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Although my arcades were more advanced than the classic. They didn't have like Galaga machines at my arcade. It was already like Mortal Kombat 2 and stuff like that, which was a good time. Did you ever get in line to play like a Mortal Kombat duel on like a arcade machine?
No, I never did.
Those were fun.
Not really.
I was never good at them, but it was fun trying to fight each other.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yep. So Arcane, I've been wanting to watch that.
Yeah.
You like my transition? Yeah.
It's a great transition. So
I was thinking about talking more about pinball, but I was like, I'll give you a break. I'll give you a break from pinball.
I mean, you had it was like,
that is what I've been playing. In my defense, I've been playing a lot of pinball. That's what I've been playing.
You can play modern titles, but that works too. Arcane season 2 just dropped a couple days ago. And
did they drop all of it at once?
No, it's going to be in, I think, 3 episode little chunks, and I think there's 9 episodes total.
Do the Netflix thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, it's okay because it's a lot. Like, there's each episode is, I think, about 40 minutes long or a little bit less, and
that's hard to binge.
They are very, very, very good.
Yeah,
it obviously is continuing on with the story of season 1 and everything, but it's moving quick. If I had to have one critique, it moves fast.
Isn't this their last season?
Yeah, so they're only doing 2 seasons. So
there's a good chance that they had to speed up the narrative to get all the plot points in.
Could be.
It's like Game of Thrones, right?
But I think it was Riot's decision and the creators' decision to do only 2 seasons. I don't think this was something where they're like, we just want to, we need to end it in one more season kind of a deal.
Interesting.
Especially considering like it was such a success for, I think, Riot and Netflix. I don't know why they would just... there's going to be more, but it's not going to be Jinx and Vi's story. Or if they are involved, like it's going to be like on the side or something.
Well, that would be really cool. I've always appreciated like it's really common with like British shows where they'll just be like, we're doing 2 or 3 seasons, and like that was the plan from the start, and we wrote it out from the start, and that's it. And then you watch it and you're like, that was very satisfying the whole way through, and it's got a nice ending, and I didn't get bored or jaded with like them trying to squeeze more life out of it, and it's always been better, you know?
Yep.
So I can appreciate that.
We're so insatiable because it's like, this is so good. I just want to exist in this world. Give me more content.
Yeah. So if the plan with Arcane is to finish up that storyline and make it really enjoyable and conclude it, and then move on to other characters in that same universe, that could also be awesome. Assuming they keep this enough of the original team online that made it so great in the first place. Because you can't just be like, let's make a new one and then hire new people to make it. It's probably not going to be great. Something about the writing team and the animation team and the directors just to get like, it's incredible on all fronts, right? It's
I mean, their universe is so large that they could be making animations for as like the next 50 years, like especially because it takes so long to make because of how incredible the anime. Apparently it's not mocap, and that blows me away. Now they have said that there's a rumor going around that both of these seasons 1 and 2 cost them $250 million, and which is the most expensive animation ever made apparently, and you can see why. Because, you know, when you watch an anime or anything, like a cartoon, anything, one character will be animated. Everything else in the scene is usually just static. And then they switch the other character who then starts to move. And the other person just stands there. Because, like, it's hard to animate and it costs a lot of money. Or they'll put their hand over their mouth so that they don't have to animate even the flaps of the mouth, right? That's literally what they do to cut costs. In Arcane, everything moves. Like when one character is moving, even if it's they're just talking, each character is moving the entire time, and it's so lifelike. Their eyes are moving. There's subtle like just adjustments the entire time based off of like what's happening. It's a visual feast, and season 2 is no different in that respect from season 1. There is so much attention to detail. I'm gonna have to watch it through again.
It is like it's movie level quality animation in a show form, which I guess I can kind of more understand where the cost goes for that, but I also wish it was cheaper somehow. I'm like, tech's better now, right? It should be less expensive, but they just keep upping the bar, so of course it gets more expensive.
Yeah. I just don't understand how it's not mocapped. There are scenes where they are so lifelike, and you're like, how did you do this by hand? There's got to be something that they're using. Like there has to be. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I would recommend, if you're interested, watching animators work. It's pretty interesting because they really do just have to understand this weird nuance of like human movement in a way that nobody ever thinks about it. And
human movement, and also from a different perspective, you know, like you're watching someone moving. It's not. Yeah, sorry, that sounds stupid in my head. Continue.
Yeah, right. Well, it's 3D animated, so you got to animate them and then position the camera wherever, right? So the animation has to look perfect from all angles.
It has to look good from those angles, right?
Yeah. But I remember when this must have been in high school, I got like a little tour of a local game studio. Forgot what their studio name was. They worked on some of those. Do you remember PlayStation 2 Lord of the Rings games?
Yeah.
They had they had like the 2 towers, and you would be fighting in Helm's Deep as Aragorn and stuff, and it's pretty dope. But I got a tour of that, and I got to check out how the animators were working, and they had all these funny videos up on their computers that was them. They recorded videos of themselves like swinging chains around and stuff. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Like they're out on the balcony of their like offices, like swinging chains and recording themselves. And it's like, oh, that's the cave troll
reference.
When they need to animate the cave troll swinging the chain around, they don't know how to animate a chain flying through the air. So they take video, and then they watch the video back, and they study how chain physics work, and then they animate it, you know?
Yeah. And that's a good point. I think they do use a lot of references. So I think Last of Us, the original, and maybe in the sequel, maybe as well, they didn't use facial animation like mocap. They use mocap, right, for like the actual movement, but not facial mocap. So everything was hand animated in the first game, and you wouldn't think that based off of like how impeccable every scene is and how lifelike and how real every character, reacts. But it's handcrafted the entire way.
Yeah, it's impressive. I do think we will be getting newer and better tools eventually. The industry's always coming up with tools, and like the latest one that Unreal just added to their engine is all about blending animations. So it's becoming much easier to transition between states and stances and stuff like that. And maybe maybe those types of tools will start hitting more of the industry and speeding things up. But at the same time, you look at any scene in there and there's just so many layers of depth. It's not just the animation, but it's building all the assets. It's lighting all the assets. It's creating the perfect camera angle. It's about creating enough tension in the scene by blocking out the movement and when to cut and when not to cut. It becomes making a movie essentially, but just purely digital. And so there's no way to get around some of that artistry. You just got to do it by hand.
And speaking of those layers, that's one thing I really appreciate about Arcane is it's not, they're telling the story through so many more different facets and layers than just, dialogue and action, right? Like the world itself tells the story, the direction, the artistry of, literally the animation. You have the characters and the voice actors are also telling it, right? It's all the subtle things that add up to the overall world that they've created. And it is a league of its own. Literally, dare I say, League of Legends.
A League of Legends, yeah. No, that's good. It's an incredible show, and I think everybody should watch it because it's like the Avatar of animated films, right? Where you're just like, whoa, like, how much
and anyone can enjoy it. You don't have to be into League.
Yeah. Oh, I know nothing about League of Legends, and I love the show. Like, the characters are incredible, and it's such a fun fantasy universe that I was like, wait, League of Legends has a story? Like, I didn't even know any of that. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not a bad story. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. They actually, I think there's a little things that differentiate itself from the League story. I think they're taking some creative, but I think they also, the rumor I heard was the guys that worked on Arcane also worked on the lore, so they are quite familiar with it, and that helps. But I think they also made some deviations for the sake of just being able to tell a better story.
Yeah, and I'm totally cool with that. It's like when I was reading the Expanse books, the guys who wrote the Expanse also, I think, really helped with the scripts on the show too, and the show just improves some of the weird little plot holes from the books, and you go, okay, that's different, but actually it's better now. So if you're going to take your old story and look at it a second time and be like, you know what, this would be better if we switch that up and improve it, then I'm all for that kind of change.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to talk to you about pinball because, I mean, I got the Terminator 2 table working and it is fantastic. I am still struggling with the software of this thing, and I'm not doing a review until I get the next version of the software because I want to get all this stuff together. But it is fun, dude. I'm learning about pinball culture and like strategies and stuff, and getting into that. It's funny to watch like really good players play online, and you're like, holy crap, like this is a game of like pure skill. It's just,
oh yeah, I'm sure. I do find it fascinating that there is a subculture of pinball players who get really good at pinball, and then they make YouTube content and videos about it, and then you watch it, and then I think that's awesome.
You think that's awesome, Matt?
I actually think that's awesome that there's a subculture of all this stuff. Yeah.
Well, you know what's really funny is it is full on boomer gaming culture. So like, I was trying to find out info about like maintaining a virtual pinball table, and there are no Discord channel. Well, okay, maybe there are Discord channels, but the one that I needed is, of course, a Facebook group, right? So if I need to like sort through information, it's all Facebook messages, and it's just a nightmare. And I'm like, why is this the one place to get the info that I need for my pinball? Oh, it's because everybody who has one is like pushing 50 or something. They're all just like old people. And then I watch the tutorials online.
Old people.
I mean, look, man, you watch a tech tutorial from somebody who's 50 plus, and you got 10 minutes of like preamble before you get to any of the meat, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, all right, so first you want to open up this folder over here. And I like to organize my folders with yellow. And sometimes I like to check this little box over. And you're like, oh my God, they're telling us how to use Windows, man. Like, just tell me what setting I need to change in the software. And they're like, it's like, here, in case you didn't know how to use Windows, here's the window. Yeah, so for me...
at the same time, though, there's then me who goes to, like, try to cook a recipe, and I'm so bad at cooking. It's nice when they dumb it down to, like, the bare necessities, you know, where I'm just like, I don't even know how to turn on the oven. So thank you for letting me know how to do that. These tutorials are for other
50-year-olds, I think. And so when I see them and I'm like, yeah, I know computer stuff, it's just like, oh, I got to get through all of that before I can get to the meat and potatoes.
Which is annoying. I hear you.
Yeah. Recipe wise, though, and I think we've talked about this before, man. Chat GPT, it has not been failing me. It's a solid thing.
Sometimes you question it. You're like, why am I putting glue in this? But man, it really kept things together. It held it together.
Yeah, you need that consistency. Also, fun fact: you can eat glue. Don't know if you knew that.
I mean, Elmer's glue.
Elmer's glue.
I do because I saw little Timmy growing up just scarfing that stuff down during lunch.
Yep. There you go. I should clarify and say that is Elmer's glue. And also, just don't eat glue in general.
Yeah, just don't eat glue. It was a joke. You know, don't eat glue, kids. Or adults.
I think some glue actually is really bad for you, so please don't eat that.
Yeah, there's some glue that will just straight kill you. So, yeah, don't eat glue.
This is what you come to the podcast for, is
really
useful.
This kind of advice. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Speaking of ChatGPT and AI, Netflix, you know how Netflix has been making like weird games, like choose your own adventure type games on the Netflix platform?
I haven't actually tried that, but I've heard of it. Yes. You
and just about every other gamer, because they canceled the whole thing. A little while
that'd
ago.
Be why.
Who would have thunk that when you logged into Netflix, you weren't logging in to play a video game? I think some of them actually people liked, but it was just sort of a weird platform to try and turn into a gaming platform. You're like, it's like Facebook trying to be everything. You're like, just be the thing that you're good at and don't try and be everything. So they pulled the plug on that, but they still have an AI gaming division, which they're still pursuing. And I don't know what that means. Yeah. All the hype for AI gaming is it's just like older people with their marketing spiel going like, ew, this is going to be the turn of the tides and the biggest thing in gaming history and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're not giving me anything specific here. It's all just kind of like hype language, and you're not saying what kind of game you might be able to make with it, why people are going to like it. It's just sort of like innovation and power and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm all for a cool AI game that uses AI stuff in it to like give me a real-time interactive conversation, you know, and like an RPG or fantasy game. But none of them are really saying that yet. They're just talking about it in generalities, which is hard to get excited about.
Their size and scope is exciting, but I think they're jumping the gun. What I'm excited for AI is what we saw with Epic's with their engine, where you can take like an asset, like a riverbed, move it to the side, and then it will just sort of form the other side organically and make something that looks like a riverbed, but different, right?
That's not AI, though.
AI. Isn't it AI?
No, that's just procedurally generated content. So it's
just what?
Well, I mean, okay.
AI.
Are we gonna the definition of AI has already expanded way beyond.
Exactly. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just trying to guess what you think it's supposed to look like.
Although nobody is saying PCG is AI. I'm just putting that out. You're saying it.
So wait a second. When I ask, let's say, ChatGPT what I would like for dinner based off of these ingredients, and then it gives me a couple of options, that's AI?
Yeah. Okay. So
no. Let me Levelcap, you wash your mouth right now. All right. So, but then when I create a riverbed and I move that riverbed and then it organically shifts it to try to simulate what a real riverbed would look like in real life, guessing what a riverbed would look like, that's not AI?
So it would be if it was guessing, but it's not guessing. So it's using a series of rules that you can open up a graph and look at. And it'll be like, okay, when there's this much space, propagate it with this asset and randomly pick one of the 5 arrays. And then around that, attach these things in this mathematical order. So I've opened up these graphs. You can go open up that demo, that very specific demo that you're talking about.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point. But it's essentially doing what AI is doing to some degree, but with more input. Yes. If you build it by hand to do that, because that was built by hand to do that, right?
Then it can look like it's intelligently filling in an area, but it's doing it based on an algorithm that you have hand computed. Yeah.
So they put information in, and then it took information out.
I think the point here is that the definition of AI has really gone way beyond what actual AI is.
Yeah.
And so even ChatGPT by many standards is not AI. It's
You see where I'm going with this though, right?
I mean, I didn't for a little bit, but I think I do now. Yeah.
Besides, because you're right. Now that you've informed me, isn't this weird? Apparently, this is a lost art. So now that you've informed me of new information of how it actually functioned, I agreed with you, and I'm changing my opinion on this certain topic. It seems to be a lost art. Anyways,
I will say Atif in chat is saying that the original one was AI, but maybe he's thinking of something else. I don't know. There was that kind of really well-known demo. I think it's called like Electric Dreams from Epic, and it's like a jungle environment. And they show...
Wasn't there like a car driving through it?
Yeah, okay. We're thinking of the same one. Yeah, that one is fully PCG set up, and it's based on a handcrafted algorithm that's not... It is deep, but it's not like unknowable deep. Like one person can go in and build that and then knows how it works at every step of the way. But yeah still impressive.
But you could set up an AI system that does that, but doesn't need to have the input or all of the manpower to create the back end to be able to do that. That's kind of where I was going with this, right? So to create levels, it will just organically make them based off of, you put in some things and you handcraft it to some extent, but then you can move things around, and then the game and then the AI will try to. That's where I could see AI assisting developers on a smaller scale or even a larger scale to facilitate video, creating levels and stuff like that, right?
Well, yeah, and EA actually demoed kind of what you're talking about not that long ago, where it was sort of a boxy FPS level where they had boxes, and then they would open up a little chat dialogue and say, make me a level with a big pyramid in the background. And all of a sudden a pyramid would form like in real time, and then they would run towards it. And so I think that's kind of what you're talking about, which is like... Kind of,
yeah.
Yeah. Those tools for sure are going to be super useful if we go in that direction. It's just hard to know. The problem I have with AI right now is when they hype it up, and then when they show something, the use cases for what they do often aren't there yet, or they're just using flowery language. You're like, I can appreciate you trying to excite people, but there isn't really anything here yet. You're like, this will be really cool once you've done like 4 to 5 more iterations of it, and we get more control. Right. But I think like, say, Epic's Fortnite, Unreal Engine Fortnite experiences and all that stuff, they'll probably start getting these tools into that engine at some point, and then kids who want to make their own Fortnite mods, they'll just be like, now make a castle over there. And then like a castle will pop up, and they'll be like, I want a forest right here. And then a forest will pop up. And that for sure is coming, like probably not too far away, like 2 to 3 years out, I'd say is probably when we're getting some of those tools in, which is exciting.
It will be incredible.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's going to be quite as deep as we're imagining. It might just be like, we can pick from 4 forests and plop them here, as opposed to making a never before seen forest with supercut. Who knows how much you could iterate on it, but it would be neat if that's what game development
Things are moving very quickly.
right? If you're making World of Warcraft and you're like, okay, now make me a field of a wheat field or something and put a windmill in the middle of it. And okay, over here, make a river. Oh, that's too wide. Make it more narrow. Can we have like a bridge with going over it? Oh, that's a wood bridge. Can you make a cobblestone bridge? And like that becoming game dev would be amazing down the road. But I think
it would be.
That's a little
feels like
out.
Also the artistic part would just completely go out the window.
The problem is that AI is not good at inventing new stuff. It's only good at sourcing things. And basically that just means that you don't get anything particularly innovative, right? So it's like, it's just kind of looking at what's already been done, and you can't be like, make something cool and crazy that I've never seen before and then expect it to look good, you know, where if you talk to a great concept artist, you can tell them to do that and they'll give you like 3 or 4 options, of which a lot of them are probably going to look close to what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
Anyway, exciting times. I watched a movie last night that I was excited about. I had been hearing good things about this. It's called, what was it called? I'm looking for the name. I think I deleted
Strange
it.
Darling.
Strange Darling. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, it is a weird name.
I was there. I was the Strange Darling.
Did you watch it yet, my Strange Darling?
No.
It's there's not a lot I can talk about with the plot without giving it away. I'll just say it's sort of a thriller that revolves around a serial killer.
Okay.
So you got to go in.
Love, I like how you're bringing up a topic of discussion and you're like, I can't actually talk about it because it will spoil everything.
Well, there's stuff I do want to say about it.
Okay.
I'm not bringing this up and saying I can't say anything.
I saw this really cool movie, and that's all I can say about it. All right.
It's good. Okay. Also, it's an indie film. It's a thriller based about a serial killer in the Pacific Northwest, which, actually really close to where we live. So that's always fun when you're like, cool, serial killer in my neck of the woods. And it started off very pretentious in that one of the very first things that comes up on the screen is this was shot on 35 millimeter film. I was like, all right, film snob. Like, it's just a funny thing to say at the start of a movie.
To like try to flex that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it didn't really have any bearing on anything other than just so you know, we shot this with film, which I assume also means that they didn't use CG and everything was kind of done with practical effects and all that kind of stuff. So it was probably made in a very traditional way, which I can appreciate. It's kind of nostalgic, but I didn't know what to think when starting off and it's going, this was shot in 35 millimeter film. And I'm like, okay.
And we also paid our employees a reasonable wage.
Yeah. No animals were hurt during the production of this film. Yeah. And you're like, okay, like, all right.
We paid our taxes on time.
Yeah. So it's a serial killer movie. The acting is phenomenal. Really good plot points. Man, it's so hard to talk about this because the trailer comes out and it said go in blind. And I stopped watching the trailer and I just said, screw it. Let's go in. I don't want to know anything else about this movie. And I went in blind and I was very pleasantly surprised with just how much the movie surprised me, because it could very much just be a typical serial killer thriller type dynamic. Those have been around forever.
And it turns into a rom-com at the end.
Turns into a rom-com, and everybody's a serial killer. Yeah, I don't know. I'll just say it was great. If you're into sort of indie films that are maybe a little pretentious but kind of earn it throughout the making, you'll like this one. It's
nice.
It's a good adventure. You're definitely not going to it's going to throw you for some curveballs.
Strange Darling.
Strange Darling.
Oh, she's got bright red hair.
Mm-hmm.
Rotten Tomatoes through the roof.
Yeah. It's cool. I'm glad that the indie film scene is still alive and kicking, man. These are the kind of movies that I like and I want them to be around forever. And It seems like all the good stuff is happening.
I was gonna say, why do I recognize this actress? She's from Reacher.
Oh, is she?
I think so.
You watched Reacher? I had such a hard time with Reacher, man. It is so corny.
I watched season 1 and enjoyed it, and then season 2, I watched a fair amount. It
Yeah, careful. Jason's in chat, and he's like in love with that show.
I think we talked about this show and how, and I think even Jason, like, you know, was like, "Hey, there's explanations for this," but there was a scene that just made me roll my eyes over and over and over and over again, where I'm like, there's like suspension of disbelief, and then there's whatever the hell this was, right? Like a cop going out of cover to try to save someone, and then just walking forward, shooting their gun. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? A police chase through a city, but there's no one else around, and there's no cops responding to this active, you know, gunfight. You know, I'm like, what is happening?
It's like when they do a car chase through downtown LA and the streets are open. You're like, what are you?
You're like, what?
LA has never once looked like this. You could drive down the streets at like 2 a.m. and you'll be running into traffic. Like, come on, guys.
So I suspension disbelief, I don't mind, but when it's just one thing after another, like I can't. It's too much. It's too stupid. So I really actually enjoyed season 1, but season 2 just wasn't hitting for me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Also, she's not in season 2, sadly, because she was great in season 1.
Yeah. She's really good in this movie. Like, she's kind of the star of it in terms of acting performance. Like, there's just some scenes in there where you're like, damn, like, how can because they, as an indie movie, they do a lot of shots where they don't cut for a while. It might be 5-10 minute long scene where they don't cut at all. And you're like, yeah, you can't trip or miss your cue, or like, you're like, oh, I'm sorry guys, I just wasn't feeling it. Can we take that again? And you're like, nah, you're shooting on film. That's super expensive. And practical effects, then you got to reset a whole bunch of things, you know, like it's just probably a nightmare. So I can appreciate that too. Did you ever see some of the making of Children of Men? Do you remember that movie?
I do, but it was so long ago.
It was a while ago, but that movie has like incredibly long sequences that are uncut, and watching the making of it is fascinating because it's just rehearsals for days and days and days and days and days and days. And then they finally get it. Yeah. And then they get to do the take because there'll be like explosives and tons of crap going off. Right. And they don't want to blow up a building during rehearsal. They blow up the building during the take, you know? So they got to get it just right. And just like, man, I can really appreciate the craft of that because it is not just to say that they did it, it's to build tension during the scene by not cutting the camera and making you feel like you're right there with the person. And then when crazy stuff happens in that moment, you're in it with them, as opposed to the camera just cutting away and doing a wide shot and doing whatever it needs to do. Now you become a spectator as opposed to a passenger to a degree. You know, it's different.
What was that one? There was a World War I movie, 19 something.
I think it was 1917. I think.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. That also, I mean, that took it to the nth degree, but that was also incredibly immersive because it was just, you're there, you're just watching this happen, and it just feels like it never cut. Like, you know, once you know, because if you edit at all, you're like, oh, that's when they did the edit. That's when they did the edit. But there's sometimes you're just like, it doesn't look like they ever. Where's the cut? Where is the cut? You blink and you'll miss it, basically.
Those ones are crazy, especially because those ones were like heavily like explosion and airplanes are crashing at one point. You're like,
how did you do this?
Yeah. And even if the airplane was CG, it like crashed through a barn or something. So you're like, stuff had to be like queued up at the right time. And you're just like, you don't want to trip.
It was a great movie.
Yeah. Fun fact, the camera guy did trip in one of those takes. He was like walking backwards and a mattress was in the wrong spot or something, and he like tripped over it. And, you know, like one of those trips is like, who knows how much money in production costs, like $100,000 or something. Like, those camera guys become kind of the stars of the show
in their own way. Yeah. There was a lot of shots in this where I'm like, dang, that camera guy just had to watch this crazy event happen
and then walk through 3 rooms backwards and not bump into anything and hit every angle perfectly and catch all the characters. And you're like, he's got the hardest job in the whole movie. You know, like the actors are doing phenomenal, but like, can we get like a camera guy credit at the end of the film? And like, yeah.
God, especially in 1917, there's a scene where it's like really emotional and you're like, it hasn't cut. It hasn't cut. What? How are they still going?
Yeah.
Especially for like, because when they're walking around, sure, that's one thing. But when they're acting, it's all line based and they just dialogue back and forth for 10 minutes. You're like, how did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the emotional payoff too. Very impressive.
Yep. It's good stuff. So that's my recommendation for the week. Strange Darling. Okay. I'm going to hop on Arcane too, because I'm very excited to get into that one.
As you should. As all of you should.
Yeah. Great universe. Not too much in the game news this last week, but hopefully this week will be more interesting, and hopefully we'll get some early access to Stalker 2, man. I'm so excited for that one. I want to dive back into that exclusion zone, man. Get my rads up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just high enough to kill the bacteria, but not enough to start mutating.
Just enough.
Just enough. There's radiation in everything. It's just a safe amount, okay?
Yeah. I guess technically true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The sun's radioactive. You know that?
Yeah, it's just this big ball of radioactivity, and we just kind of isn't it fast? This is gonna sound like stoner talk. There's just this ball. If you look up in the sky, and it just blinds you, and it's just always there. If you just look up at it, it'll just nuke your eyes. It's always there. At any point, it could just blind you.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it for a while, yeah.
I know, but it's just there at all times. This constant threat.
This is like, aside from the constant threat and anxiety of the conversation, it's like a conversation I'd have with my 6-year-old or my, one of my kids. That's just like, what? Is it on fire? How's it on fire?
Yeah,
you know, and you're like, then you have to think, you're like, yeah, why is it on fire?
Why? For billions of years, it's just been toasted. Like, what? It's going to be, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know enough physics to actually understand all of it.
Neither do I.
One day. Shall we wrap up the old Potteroonie there?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, if you want to support the podcast, we have a Patreon thing, and we'll be doing our live show after the podcast. Otherwise, join us every Wednesday for a new episode, and Matt is going to give you some great and useful life advice.
All right. So when you're beginning construction of your theme park, what you want to consider is to not make your roller coasters have too many G-forces, because that'll kill your park members. So,
lame. Nobody wants to go to low G-force Matimio's park over here. Come to Levelcap's high G's park.
Out at Six Flags. So shut your mouth.
It's true. I just had to give up my roller coaster card right there. It's like, yeah. I do love roller coasters. And then I'm just like, oh, I guess if the G-forces hit a certain level, I pass out. Which is good to know. I've been on an acrobatics airplane flight before in a open cockpit biplane. Oh, and that was cool. Fun. I loved it. And I didn't feel lightheaded at all. But I think it was maybe just that leg dangling or something. I don't know.
The combination of things together.
Yeah, but I had to give up my dreams of being a fighter pilot that day. A fighter
pilot.
Yep.
It's too bad, Level.
I'll never get to fly the F-35.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.